Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Room 42. I'm Liz Fraley from Single Sourcing Solutions. I'm your moderator. This is Janice Summers from TC Camp. She's our interviewer. And welcome to Isidore Dorpeño, today's guest in Room 42. Isidore Dorpeño is an associate professor of professional writing and rhetoric at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. He received his BA in English at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana in 2008. And his MS in Rhetoric and Technical Communication at the Michigan Technological University in Houghton, Michigan, 2013. His PhD in Rhetoric, Theory, and Culture at Michigan Technological University in 2016. And his research focuses on election technology, international technical communication, social justice, user experience, public civic engagement, and localization. He's the author of the book, User Localization Strategies in the Face of Technological Breakdown. He has guest edited 2 special issues, Technical Communication, Election Technology, and Civic Engagement for Technical Communication, and Enacting Social Justice and Technical Communication for IEEE. He is published in Technical Communication Quarterly, Community Literacy Journal, the Journal of Business and Technical Communication, and the Journal of Technical Writing and Communication. And today, he's here to help us start answering the question, how does technical communication intersect with technology and civic engagement? Greetings and welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful for reaching out. And I'll say it again that you're doing wonderful work, reaching out to scholars and helping to bridge that scholars practitioner divide that conversation ongoing. So thank you very much.
Isidore, it is always a delight to talk with you.
Yeah,
and I always learn such interesting things from you. And it's one of the things that really, when you think on it, when you think about elections, you really don't think about technical writing, right? You think about political rhetoric, but you don't think about technical writing.
Yes.
And when you look at it, is like a hotbed of practical experience for a technical writer, right?
Exactly, and that's what informs my scholarship. Elections are managed by technical documents.
Yes.
Voting ballots, mail-in ballots, voter registration. These are technical documents. And so we need to pay attention to those. In most cases, when we talk about technical writing, we think about organizations and what writers do. But we also have to expand, right? Expand the definition of technical writing, especially the definition of technology, not just looking at like artifact, like computer and those big things that are designed out there.
Right.
Scholars define technology to include a lot of things, and reports are a form of technology because they shape and we shape them and they shape us, right? That dualism that exists with technology, shaping and being shaped, that's what technical documents also do. They are not just mere documents, and I tell my students about this. These are not mere documents. They shape, and ballots shape electoral processes. So why don't we expand the scope of our scholarship?
We do.
And mostly because scholars have been advocating that we need to expand to public sphere and expand beyond organizations to look at how we intersect with civic issues, we intersect with public conversations. And these are some of the things that we can do to expand the scope of technical communication. So I'm happy to be doing this kind of work.
Right, because the role of a technical communicator is to inform, right? Mm-hmm. And what better thing than around an election? And when you mentioned earlier about how it helps shape our actions, right? Technical communications, because we're receiving information that's giving us information to make a decision, right? And not necessarily it's not a political, it's separating the whole political rhetoric from it, but the whole pure act of voting itself, right?
Yep. the act of voting itself is it's participating in civic activities, and we do participate in civic activities, and so we must work to bring theory to such practices, right? And to see that our theories are not just limited to organizations. Our theories can really help people understand their lived experiences. They understand the what they do and why they do what they do, right? And also to let our students know that, hey, we are not just limited to the organization, especially if we have to advocate for users. If we have to advocate for the marginalized, then we need to expand to see the various ways that people are marginalized. And the electoral space is one way, especially in America, it's one way that people are being marginalized, especially Black folks, people of color. Conversations about race and election is really rife. And how can we, technical communicators, contribute to such conversations, right? And inform people about such practices, and also to get people to understand that, hey, you are not just participating, right? I'm going to vote, but you have to think critically about that form of participation and the various documents and the various processes that make your participation possible. We need to really interrogate those if we want to have clean elections, if you want to advocate for democracy that is really, really representative, then there's a need to have such conversations.
Well, right, because, I mean, it's one thing, political, we make decisions, but then one of the barriers is, well, how do we enact this decision? How do we execute? What's the procedure? And I think that's where technical communications can really help make that procedure an even playing field, right? Instead of it being a barrier, right? Because how
Whitney Quisenberry is doing with civic arts design, right? Is doing an awesome job bringing concepts of technical communication into the electoral sphere. Her whole concept, and the whole concept of civic design is we need to design documents that will make electoral or election very accessible to people. So she's combining UX tools to help design ballots for electoral departments, talking about voting ballots or mail-in ballots and all the documents that make elections possible, right? So that's practice, that's theory meeting practice. When we talk about politics and elections, the first discipline is political science, right? Political science is the first discipline, or computer science, but we don't really see technical communicators participating in election related issues because, we are just limited to being mere scribes. Oh, you are just a mere scribe. That definition is no more that we are mere scribes. It's acknowledging that we are advocates and we can make systems work, and that helping people to redesign systems, redesign actions to make systems really inclusive, systems equitable for people to just benefit for. That's the whole goal of technical communication, because one of our really core areas is to advocate for users, advocate for marginalized. There's been other technical communicators who are using technical communication tools like UX to redesign electoral documents, redesign election processes, and it's really helping give a human face to elections and making the electoral process really accessible to people. So technical communicators, we would say, should not be just limited to organizations, but the civic space is a good place for us. If, again, we want to expand our definition and expand what we do beyond organizations.
Right. Now, are there some examples of some places or areas where, they've started to make some changes to the content, to the documentation, and get technical writers involved to make improvements?
Civic, so civic design by Quisenberry is one area. really designing ballots for different election departments from different states. So they go around the world, the country, to work with election department to redesign election processes. They perform usability testing of existing documents, right? And then help to redesign using UX and TechCom tools to do that. So there are a lot of other things that they do, and that help or improve electoral system. And they have education materials, and they organize some of these educational forums for election managers, and then they train them and talk more about how to redesign election documents. So it's one of the organizations that is doing really well. And if you want to know how technical communicators can really advocate election processes, it's looking at civic design by the Center for Civic Design, which is co-founded by Whitney Quisenberry. And the premise is that democracy is a design problem, and technical communicators are designers.
Yes.
Right? Democracy is a design problem, so we just have to make elections work for everyone. The question will be, how can technical communicators contribute? And when you talk about technical communicators, we are just limited to the design. So what design tools help? Voter ballots, those are design tools. We can analyze to review some of the inconsistencies in design in voter ballots, and expose them, and then work with election officials to revise. Stacey Abrams, Fair Fight, is also doing such an awesome job, right? But Stacey won't call herself a technical communicator, but website design, right? They're using their Fair Fight website to advocate for electoral issues, right? So, and technical communicators design communication tools. They design websites and manage websites. So these are some places.
Websites are a big component of technical communication.
Right? So
if you're not thinking they are, they should be.
They should be.
Yeah.
Yep. So there are a lot of opportunities for technical communicators to engage in election process. We just haven't explored some of those. So it's been my goal to help us think about elections in a different way, and to see how technical communicators can be a part of it. That led me to study Ghana's biometric system. And technical communication also does talk a lot about technology design, right? So what do we use to design the tools? We use technology. And one major area of technical communication is technology studies. We talk about technology, the technical or technique, right? The technology. So the biometric technology, using biometric technology to enhance an electoral process became very interesting to me.
Yeah, for those who haven't read your papers or your book, could you explain a little bit about Ghana's biometric technology? What happened there, just kind of in a nutshell for people?
So Ghana gained independence in 1957 from Britain, and then we've been having elections for some time now. In 1992, we became really, really democratic. So that's the Fourth Republic of Ghana. And over the years, we noticed, or the electoral department noticed, some more practices, electoral malpractice, like voters impersonating, like overvoting, a lot of malpractices. So they adopted in 2012, Ghana's Electoral Commission adopted the biometric technology to enhance the electoral process.
Right, and try to minimize any
impersonation, discrepancy, voter discrepancies, and other things. But when we as in Ghana, when we adopted the biometric technology and used it, we noticed that some of those issues reoccurred, like there was still overvoting, still impersonation, and some of those things reoccurred. So 2012, I wasn't in Ghana, so I couldn't vote, but I sat behind my computer listening to processes. But one thing that really led me to pursue that project was the breakdown of the biometric technologies.
Yes.
Right. The technologies
because they implemented this thing thinking, okay, well, this will improve and ensure our election integrity.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
But it didn't have that effect.
It didn't have that effect. And it mostly started breaking down. And because the biometric wasn't designed with Ghana's culture, Ghana's environment, Ghana's weather in mind.
Yeah.
So the technology couldn't withstand.
And that was one of the really interesting things is the weather.
The weather.
Yeah, even the weather.
So it started breaking down. And it's also rejected some people. You stand in a long queue, and Ghanaians love to vote. If voting will be tomorrow, some will start queuing today at 9 p.m. to go vote.
They take their right to vote
for hours, and then you get to the election official and the machine, you're rejected. What? For hours, I'm rejected just like that. But I also noticed that conversations and reports identified a pattern, right? That the biometric technology rejected mostly people who use their hands to work, right? Like mechanics, farmers, fishmongers, because they lost the bridge that the biometric technology has to pick on. So that here the biometric technology, I would say, has a specific type of human, right, encoded into it. So the person who is to be accepted must have this perfect finger, must have this, must do this, must do that, right? But people use machetes in Ghana, so they lost some of those bridges that the technology.
So those ridges and valleys and the fingerprints are worn different, and they're scarred and calloused hands.
But it rejected most of them, and became a problem. And because there was this law that no biometric, no vote, if the biometric rejects you, you are not going to vote, right? So that power was invested into the technology by the laws that were enacted by Parliament of Ghana. So some people were really rejected and they didn't like the idea. So as someone who was interested in 1, technology studies, 2, usability and user experience, and 3, localization, I thought it was interesting for me.
Perfect storm.
Perfect for me to study this. And that led me to explore Ghana's case. And then I also looked at the documents, the user manual and other things that accompanied the biometric.
That the company that made the biometric equipment, located someplace else on the planet.
And then the interesting thing about it is that because the biometric wasn't designed to be used for election purposes, they didn't have a user manual that could tell people how to use the biometric to vote. So the EC had to rewrite a new user manual that will accompany the biometric to let people know, this is how you have to use the biometric to register people to vote. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to do, right? So that localization and users really using their creative ways to let technology work in their context became very important to me and relevant to my scholarship, mostly because it's moved conversations away from the designer as the expert who redesigns and makes changes to meet local target. But this is the case, local users who had no contact with the designers were making changes and redesigning to make the technology fit, because election day, the technology wasn't working and they had to do something.
They had to figure out how to make it work.
Because if it didn't work, that would be another thing. If you share borders with countries that have experienced post-election violence, if you are sitting on that tenterhook, then you
Yeah.
really, really want to
Yeah.
be careful. And if you are in a country where, different meanings are read into electoral processes, then you really have to be careful, because any wrong move will suggest a different thing, and that could lead
Could be
to
completely catastrophic.
this
Yeah. And
election
then
law and
violence.
other
Yeah.
things. So we were really, it was a dicey situation, but they made things work. So then that leads back to this technical communication, that advocate, right? That users, who are
Right.
users, and Bob Johnson's and other scholars who look at usability from a rhetorical perspective will say that users are not dummies, and this is a tacit example to make you feel that, oh yeah, users are not dummies. Look at these users trying to redesign a user manual to help people use the technology. They weren't part of the design process, but they are trying to make it work. Technology started breaking down, and they had to devise local means. Oh, let's use a tent. Let's use this. If technology, the biometric rejects someone, they will say that, well, go use Coke or use something to wash your hands or do this and come back. You come back and it picks on, right? And it's, so some of these local creative ways became very interesting to me. And I was able to link some of those instances to conversations, right? So trying to weave theory and practice, right? Oh, these are the things that we've been talking about, that users are not dummies, that users can make technology work. And this is what Ghana is doing. So this is an example of scholarship, or example of an occurrence or a case that can help us really appreciate the conversation that, oh, users are not dummies, and that localization and user-centered conversation should center more on users and not on the designers. And again, break that myth around, oh, designers are the only experts who know how technology should work or works, right? That users also know how to work. And so with that election study or Ghana's case, I was able to contribute to conversations in the field of technical communication and to bring election studies to technical communication. So the biometric is an example, but there are also other documents. US is not using the biometric yet, but it's using ballots. Classic example, Florida case, right? And then the hanging charts. That's that's technical communication in conversation, right? So we see these things, and how do we make these processes better for us all? Because democracy is what we think can move societies ahead or make societies progress, right? If that is it, then how can we technically communicate? How can we also contribute to this? And so Ghana's case is just a limited case to let other people know that, oh, the election process, the election terrain is a ripe terrain for technical communicators to practice the theory and to help solve problems. And I'll revert back to Quesenbury using UX and TechCom theories to make election process better. Stacey Abrams using technical communication to make things better, revising election processes, revealing injustices, right? And helping people to recognize injustices.
Well,
These are things that we can do.
That's one of the key things, is revealing where there's some shortfalls, right? Because, you're always going to run into challenges and there's going to be shortfalls out there. But I think that whole practice of the technical communicators and the critique that they put on themselves is to reveal where there are some shortfalls, where there are social injustices, so that we can correct that. Right.
And especially the social justice 10 has really given us enough tools to do some of these advocacy work, or to reveal injustices. Now we've been emboldened to reveal. I think that we used to do that, but it wasn't uh, it wasn't so explicit, right? But now the social justice thing and the cultural things, social justice things are giving us that tools to explicitly discuss some of these injustices in the electoral processes. And technical communicators can't just get in. We can train students who will go in there and revise and help revise and reshape some of these documents
reshape and revise
to make things meaningful. Last year, I taught a document design class, and one of the projects we did was revising how to run for elections in about 4 states. I think Colorado, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York are these 4 states. And it was a project that Whitney was working on. So she linked us up to some of these states. And so they had to redesign how to run elections and make information accessible for people who are not used to the legalese, right? And the technical jargons and language that's above them, right? So how does the technical communicator come in, stepped in to solve or help people? So the election, and so we designed for them. And
did you get like users involved in those states?
We got users involved, users from the various states involved to user test the documents for them. And they loved it. The students loved it. Whitney really loved it, and the various states loved it. I don't know if they've implemented some of the changes yet, but it was fun engaging with them, and it in a way exposed students to the fact that, so we can be designing documents for these people and helping them to make the electoral process meaningful and accessible to a lot of people, right? So these are the various ways that we can empower our students to make changes in their small ways. It mustn't be a big change. It can come in small changes, steps, baby steps.
Many small changes make big moves, right?
Yeah. And so these are some of the things that we can do. And I believe that if we encourage them to engage in election issues, they'll be able to understand electoral processes and see how they fit in and how they can make some of these changes.
It's interesting because, I think about, technical communicators and the integrity and the ethics in technical communication, and that its emphasis is on clarity of information, right? The facts, just representing information and then allowing the person, the human on the other side, to take in that information and make a decision and take an action based on having the right information. And I think that when it comes to elections, that's like the perfect place to be involved for a technical communicator, because it's not weighing in one side or the other side. It's presenting information and it's keeping people informed. And I don't want to say dispassionate way, but one that's not, motivated by some other end objective, right? It's not driving to an answer.
But it's also revealing that those hidden things, right?
Yes.
You called it anti-narratives, right? It's revealing the things that somebody may, they're using coded language or they're saying things in a way to evoke an emotional response rather than just provide information so an individual can make those decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah. So anti-narratives I borrowed from Walton et al. They use anti-narratives in the a paper they worked on. So then countering the dominant narratives, right? And technical communicators can reveal. So they're revealing to counter some of the dominant narrative. Oh yeah, America is a democratic state. It does this, is that. But when you go into details to analyze electoral documents, analyze the electoral
Yeah.
process to reveal some of these challenges. It helps the state to or set up, right? And if you want to be a model, then some of these things shouldn't happen. I'm working on a paper now. I'm using Stacey Abrams a lot because I'm analyzing her website. I'm looking at how
it's interesting.
she uses technical communication tools to reveal like lived experience, where users, where voters narrated their experiences, where they'll go to a polling station and then they will tell you, no, you are not to vote here. Your name is in a different register. Go there. You go to there. They'll say, no, that's not where you have to vote. You have to go to a different place. And then people get frustrated. Or some voters will say that, well, I went to the polling station to vote and they told me that my name is not in the ballot. Or some will say, well, I sent in my mail-in ballot, but I just been told that I can't vote, or I don't even know if my vote was counted, right? So revealing some of these things really do help. And I think that technical communicators can reveal, even if we won't make changes, we reveal and then let the decision makers take some actions to resolve practices that undermine or undercut the electoral process and make it unjust and unsafe.
So because we're not authoring for law, right? We're not authoring for a report or a journal article. We're like, we can reveal and rewrite it in a way that is speaking to whatever audience we're trying to reach.
Audience,
right?
Very important.
We're not, those constraints aren't there. We can actually use our skills to expand and make things more accessible.
That's why we are powerful, and the tools we give our students make them powerful. We just haven't noticed it, or our students just notice it. So it takes us to push them beyond the organizational level to the public space. It takes us to let them know that, hey, we can engage in some of these practices. It's the reason that we have there's a civic discourse, right? And there was a special issue in, is it JBTC? And there's also been special issues on public rhetoric and the public phase of technical communication. Some of these calls are pushing and redesigning and redefining technical communication, right? That we shouldn't confine our students to just mere organizations, but we should get them to know that they can participate in public conversations and make real changes. Outside the organizations. It's helping them to think about the documents they write and what effect those documents have on users, on readers, on policy makers, and let them know that they have the powerful tool. I think Robert Johnson uses that language, the powerful tool, right? And we do that through writing. Right. If you say you're a technical writer, the first, you must be a good writer. Well, okay, good. Let's use that to make a change. How do we do that? And what are the spaces that we can make those changes? And I think that the electoral space is one space.
It's a huge space, and it's a really interesting space to break that barrier. Right.
It's true.
Of technical writers just being involved in technology in the traditional sense. I think that this whole sphere around elections really demonstrates how it goes beyond. It doesn't have a boundary. You can go into civic responsibilities and practice technical writing and actually help move things forward for people, make things more just.
Right? It's also redefining technology. Right? Not just looking at that had to, right? Oh, it's a
Right.
computer. But if you
Right.
see a paper, you think that, oh, paper is not a technology. A paper is a technology.
It
Right?
is.
There are scholars
It is.
who expand. Mitcham, for instance, defines technology as object, technology as knowledge, technology as artifacts. I think he has 4 different, I don't remember the last one, but if you look at technology from these 4 different
Yeah.
aspects, then you will know that, hey, we're just not limiting to just a computer or a car, but a paper is a technology. Even writing is a technology. The pen you use is a technology, right? But so it's also calls for redefining, and there are scholars in the field who have called for redefining of technology. Johnson is one. I also call for redefining of technology. There are other people who do that work, and just let's think about technology really well. And I like Johnson's definition of technology, where he traces it to classical notion of techne, the art of making, right? Making, the art of making, techne, the art of making. So we make. What do we make? When we write, we are making something.
Yeah.
When the final deliverable, we've made it, right? It becomes a product. So it can be a product, it can be a process, right? So it's not just limiting technology to those big things that we see, but reconfiguring and redefining technology to meet a lot of things. That's very important. It's very important.
And it's
So then
interesting
does
because, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so then does technical communication become more about the human dimension?
The human dimension becomes a part of it, right? The
Okay.
human become a part of it. Some can even say the human is a technology, right? And we have cyborgs and other things. The human becomes, so then we have to define technology in ways that humans become part of it, right? And humans can be when ideology or mentality are worked on or are structured in a way that we become automatons, right? And that we can that becomes important. It becomes important. So humans, very important part of technology, and also looking at how we can bring the human part to technology design. And that's why technical communication is a humanities field. So it becomes very important, right? Looking at the human part of technology and defining technology to include our humanness. And that we have a part to play in all of that. This is where the UX people come in, the human computer interactions folks come in, and variety of disciplines come in. And I think Heidegger even defined technology as a mode of revealing, right? Revealing. Or
right.
So the human becomes a technology when it becomes a standing reserve. Yes, Heidegger uses standing reserve, right? That you just stand and wait for someone to order you, right? That it's also a part of it.
Technical writing is a huge tent.
It is.
There's a huge tent. And and when you start to think in terms of, designing information for people, you're bringing in everybody, right? Because that's how it shapes that path, the human path that you were talking about earlier.
Yes. So some scholars say that one of our strengths is interdisciplinarity, bringing in different strengths.
Yes.
And we bring the human part too, right? Where we say that your design should consider the needs the purposes,
Yes.
contexts, and concerns of human beings,
There's
of users, right?
yeah,
Yes.
there's a specialness in technical communication.
Mhm.
There's definitely a specialness, and it's in the ethos that drive technical communication. That I think that's what makes it even more important that technical communication be involved in a lot more aspects that people wouldn't traditionally think, like in elections, you wouldn't think, in website, you wouldn't necessarily think. You would think maybe marketing communication,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Or, impassioned rhetoric, but you wouldn't think technical communication. But I think it's more important that technical communication be involved because of that ethos that's underlying that rigor that's applied in the field of technical communication, right?
Yes, and that's one major, I think for me, the UX part and usability part of TechCom is doing really, really well with that, advocating that technical writers are not just those mere writers who will sit somewhere, wait for designers to design, and then they bring the technology to them, or write instruction manuals. But we
Right.
should be
You're
part
gonna
of
write
the
down a
design part,
procedure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It
Right.
should be part of the design process. That gap must be bridged. We bring in that human part that, while designers keep designing, we'll be telling them, hey, how do we bring in the needs of the users?
Yeah.
How do we study? And we have tools and abilities
Yes.
and the skills to
Yes.
one, study humans, analyze them, and bring those into the design process. So the usability testing part, it becomes a very important part. You do it, and user-centered design, you do it, you test it, you come back, you do it, you test it, you come back. You don't design and then throw it at the users. No, but bringing them in. That's why we become advocates, right? That's how we become advocates for users, for people, and letting them know that real people use the tools that you design. And if the tools do not meet their needs, they will not make use of your tools, right? You need to. So that's the argument. And I think that hardcore technology designers in a way resist that, because they'll say, no, you don't have domain knowledge. You don't have domain knowledge. You can't be in this room. You can be in this room. But technical communicators,
and they think it stands for itself.
Right? I know.
It's obvious, right?
Yeah, but
I'm not building my own unique biases into this. No. It's pure algorithmic.
Right. That's it. And again, even if technical communicators do not have that domain knowledge to design, Liz, you point out the biases. We are there to check, to
identify
your culture shapes the way this technology is being designed. Your ideology is being put into it. And Angela Harris and other scholars who do race and technology issues, Banks and other people, and Walton Jones and Emma Rose and Agboka and all these people emphasize that, hey, your culture, your ideology will shape the way you're designing the technology.
Right back to the biometric in the voting in Ghana.
Yeah.
Right.
So they had this.
They had no concept no concept of somebody in a very hot climate using machetes or fishmongers with very calloused hands. Right. Yeah. They had no concept of that, right? Because they're in their own bubble designing.
Yep. And Ghana is not the only case. Solomon Islands, the same things happened. Hobbes and Hobbes studied their case, and they also identified that those in agriculture really suffered. They were rejected several times. Those who had tattoos, those who had dyed their fingers and other things were rejected. So that bias, right? Oh, this is the normal human body that we are designing the technology for. Anything outside the norm is an aberration and must be rejected. And the vote must be rejected or not counted. We are there to play that role, to check.
To help eliminate or shine a light on the biases. Because we all have them, right? Everybody has biases.
We do.
You're a human being. That's a human nature, right? We're not we're not perfect. We're all
No,
flawed, right?
no,
So
we are
that's the
not.
beauty of having technical
Yeah,
communicators
yeah.
in the room, is
Well
because
trained.
they
Mhm.
don't point out these biases to point
Yeah,
a finger at you and say
yeah,
you're flawed. They're just
yeah.
saying, we might want to look at this, right?
Mhm.
It's like teaching new writers the beauty of having an editor edit their work. It's the
Mhm.
same thing with designers. Need to have that ability to understand when a technical writer is critiquing or pointing
Mhm.
out things. It's
Yeah.
not to poke at their design and say they're flawed in their design. It's just to say, we have to accommodate for this, so let's adjust for
Yeah.
this,
For the,
right?
yep, it's true. And in a way that the scientists and scientists and these hardcore designers have been trained to believe that what they do is objective using the quantitative approach, right? It's
Mhm.
objective, it's neutral, it's this, it's this. And so they manage to take out their cultural biases. But scholarship indicate that this is not true. That
Well, because if there's a human at the receiving end of whatever technology that they're doing, then no.
No, right.
There's always an
No.
assumption built somewhere.
Somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we are there to reveal some of these things and help them to make their work better, not to antagonize, but make their work and their designs better
Right.
for us all to use. So,
Right, to help smooth that path forward.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's true.
Well, it has been such a delight talking to you. We've gone a little over,
Oh
but
my
it has
God.
been so nice talking with you,
Thank
Isadora.
you.
I
Thank you
really,
very
really
much for
enjoy it.
having. Same here. Same here.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for
Amazing.
having me. And you're doing wonderful work. I do hope that you continue doing this and spread the word and
Well,
help
you
bridge theory.
too.
And I will spread the word.
I love
I'll
this
spread the
civic. I
word.
love this whole the election and the civic thing into technical communications.
Mhm.
I really,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that is, and how
Yeah.
timely.
Yeah,
Now
it
more
is.
than ever, right? As people
Mhm.
become more charged, now is the time to diffuse it. And I think
Mhm.
that's the one thing that technical writer can lend into the whole situation, is that
Mhm.
diffusing,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
That unbiased diffusing,
Mhm.
just the facts,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I think is really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
I think now more than ever, I think
Yeah.
anyone who's in politics should have a technical writer helping them.
It's true. They should.
really
They
should.
should. Yeah, they should. And it'll make their work better. It'll
But
make
then
their
I'm
work
biased.
in a good way, though.
I think so.
Yeah, they should. It's very because they'll get to appreciate that technical writing is not just about writing, mere
Yes.
writing, and not
Right.
being just good writers. That
Right.
that technical writers have more to offer than
Yeah.
just mere
Writing is a part of
scribes.
it, but it's not.
It is part.
all that. Yeah.
It's part. It's
Yeah.
part of it. It's really a part of it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of rigors that technical writers go through, and the way they see things, right,
Yes.
and how they implement.
Implement.
Anyways,
Amazing.
well, again, I hate to say our time is up. I
No.
really
Right,
like
right.
talking with you. It's
Same
always
here.
so
Same here.
interesting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you
I'm
so
grateful that you invited me to have a conversation with you. It's great.
Well, thank you very
much. We
much.
are grateful that you could spare some time for us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Amazing.
All right. Well, until the next time.
That's right.
Oh,
Take care.
it's bye-bye.
So long, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.